Testing, 1, 2.
I know.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. My name is Peter Albano. I'm the Visual Arts Manager here at Real Art Base. We have an exciting night of programming for you tonight. This is Bill Body's Clothing as Disruptor, Artists in Conversation. Tonight we have three panelists and our wonderful curator. We'll start with Alva, who curated this wonderful exhibit. For me, it was a pure joy to work with. Alva has been the co-owner and editor of the Gazette Weekly newspaper in Old Lyme, the owner of Alva Gallery in New London from '97 to '09. Alva was the recipient of Connecticut's Governor's Patron of the Arts Award, currently serves on the boards of the French American Museum Exchange, Romaire Bearden Foundation, and the Connecticut Arts Foundation. To Alva's left, we have Carlos Estevez. Carlos is a prolific multidisciplinary artist whose work can be found at the National Museum of Fine Arts in Havana, Museum of Fine Art in Boston, the Bronx Museum, just to name a few. Carlos's work was lent to us by the Yale Museum of Fine Art and can be found right over here. To Carlos's left, we have Reginald Dwayne Betts. He's a poet and a lawyer and founder and CEO of Freedom Reads, a not-for-profit organization focusing on access to literature for incarcerated citizens. He is one of the contributing artists to this exhibit. His two works can be found on the south wall of our middle gallery, some of my favorite pieces in the exhibit. And to his left, we have Susan Clenard. She is an award-winning contemporary sculptor whose figurative works can be found in many public and private collections worldwide, as well as right here at Real Art Ways in the middle gallery next to Dwayne's work on the south wall. Susan currently has a wonderful exhibit up at the Workshop Gallery at Ball and Socket Arts in Cheshire, Connecticut, a great venue I suggest checking out. And I believe there's a talk next Saturday there, so if you've got free time, I would suggest checking it out. Without further ado, thank you for coming, and Artists in Conversation.
Hello, everybody. Sadly, Neville Wisdom is not here. Hopefully, Neville will arrive. But in case you're wondering, just to start off, I'm not trying to push spring, but the reason I invited Neville is this is the kind of clothing that he makes, which is a little bit disruptive. And a friend, very good friend, said, I've never seen that orange piece. And I said, yeah, well, I bought it, but where would I wear it? It's pretty disruptive. When I got the show hung, there were a couple of things that I hadn't actually realized when I was curating. One was how much of the artwork included text. And it wasn't an intention, although the initial inspiration for the exhibition was Leslie Dill, the artist who has the dress with a poem written all over it. And I saw an exhibition years ago where she had clothing that had sayings from poets and Sojourner Worth and other historical figures sewn on them in huge, they were 8 feet tall, 9 feet tall, but the kind of costume that they might have worn, or clothing they might have worn. And that set off the spark in my head of, wow, that's a portrait, but what a different portrait that is, what a different way of making a portrait. And then as I look at a lot of art, I went around and I saw other artists doing other things with clothing that I hadn't anticipated could be done. So that's how this started, but it turns out that there is a lot of text in the show. And Carlos is an artist that I've known many, many years and seen a lot of his work, but I had not seen a piece of his that included text, with the exception of this piece. And I might be wrong, Carlos, but this is rather unusual for you, and so I thought I'd start off with letting you talk about how that happened.
Well, first, thank you everybody for coming to this conversation. And thank you, Alba, for having me in the show. It's a really special privilege for me to be in the show, and an honor to share this panel with you guys. so going to your question, you're absolutely right. I just have a few pieces, as far as I remember, just this one and a drawing that I have been included in writings. The reason why I was including writing in this test is because this piece is about a question, and it's an unsolved question. I know I will never solve this issue, but it's an enigma for me, and somehow working on the enigma, on the mystery of life, is a way to be connected and keeping the mystery alive. So the enigma is the human nature, human spirit. We all look alike. I mean, we recognize a physiognomy, but we don't know what is inside. And also, for me as a Cuban, that we have Cuba as an island isolated by political reasons and for geographical reasons. We have plenty of time to dream and to figure out what we have inside. So that was the inspiration for that piece. So I was trying to put myself in the situation that if you interrogate yourself, try to know yourself, but you never know, because we are mutant creatures. We're always evolving and changing and growing and getting old, and also we react in different situations in different ways. So it's a whole universe gravitating inside us. So I realized that the clothing that we use is a way to hide. Well, there is a lot of information, of course, that's the whole subject of the show, on the clothing, different culture, historically, but it's also a way of hiding what we have inside. I mean the body, the scar. So I was poetically, imaginarily, I was trying to, if you take your clothes out, try to look the truth, the essence of human nature, you will never get it. Even if you open your heart and see your anatomy, you will never get it. So that's the whole story about the sculpture, the installation.
Thank you. And I did want to say that this is a conversation. I wish we were sort of more round. So if anybody wants to pop in with a comment, please do on the panel. And we'll get to your questions afterwards. But Dwayne, your art is very much based in text, and I think you're the only artist that is collaborated on a piece in the exhibition. So I thought it would be great to hear you talk about your work.
Yeah, it was also interesting, the idea of collaboration and what it means to collaborate with a printer, because it felt like when I started doing it, that wasn't necessarily a response when artists work with a printer, but I sort of felt like Ruth Lingen, it was so much of the work. It was her that told me what it meant to think about handmade paper and think about what it means to transform an object into something else. And so transforming clothing into paper. And so first, the notion of it being a collaboration, I think is something important to me, but I don't know if that's necessarily the way the artistic world views the relationship between like the artist and the printer. And so anyway, I think that's important for me to know, because it was partly a journey, and a journey of transforming like an object like clothing into paper means you have a guide, and that guy truly is a collaborator. Yo, it's weird because y'all seem so fucking engaged, man. I mean, it's cool. I mean, it's cool, but no, this is the thing though. It's like Ruth. It's like at the end of the day, this shit is making paper. You know what I mean? And it's a physical labor. And I think sometimes we think about art and it gets really. And this is why one of the things I like about your work. I showed a friend of mine the sculpture, the piece. I don't even know how to put the name that you gave me. It depicts work. And what you have on a world like this, like, you know, paper that was made out of clothes of men who were serving life in prison 30, 40 years, people who were friends of mine. But the notion that if you transform it into something that can sit in a space like this, the people in this space think about their lives differently. Yeah, that's kind of bullshit though. You know, I mean, it sounds good, it sounds great, but and I even, you know, it even has letters, people going, like when Salt Lake Refinery in Michigan, and we put that into phase 2. And I think one of the challenges is, especially when I see it on the wall, is this question of does the art translate into freedom? And I am with this, on some real way I would say it doesn't. But in the case of a lot of my friends, it has, because I think what art should do is ask us what we do next. And so it's a fucking difference between like feedback and guidance. A lot of people love to give feedback. It's like, let me give you some feedback on what you did today. It's like, no, I don't want your feedback, right? And then guidance is sort of like, yo, let me help you do what you did today that might have been suspect a little bit better. And so, when I first was telling my homies about this project, they were sort of like, yo, but will this paper get us free? But then they were like, yo, but Shaheed, you in law school, won't you represent us? And so it wasn't just like how am I thinking about this art that you're doing? It was, let me get everybody we know to send you clothes. But now, as you do this, let's think about how that actually is a conduit to freedom. And so when you look at that, there's several people clothes in there that, I got them out subsequently. So that actually does make me feel good about it, even though, it existed on the wall. It's more of a question than an answer. And it's a perpetual question that, frightening me. Like, I'm not even sure if it gets asked in a room, like if I'm not in the room.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of artists feel that way, that they put
Yo, see, I thought it was so
piece of art
neat.
and they wonder.
No, I thought you said a lot of artists be like cutting their cell phones off so they can focus and concentrate. No, I wasn't even shaming that person because I thought it was me. But that was the Quiet Storm music.
Yeah.
Anyway, you don't know.
All right, we're gonna move on to Susan now, and I did get thank you, Joy. I did get a message from Neville that he was tied up, but he will be here, because I thought it would be fun to have a designer, since everybody, the minute you talk about clothing, right, everybody immediately goes to, oh, fashion. Oh, it's a fashion show. No, it's not a fashion show, but having a fashion designer who thinks in a very artistic way, I thought would be fun on the panel. So he will be here. Susan, your work, yours is not a wedding dress, but it is white, as many of the dresses in this show are, and I think a lot of them speak to women's issues, women's burdens as they go through life. And I believe that's a lot of what your work talks about, so I thought you could tell us more about it.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. I'm honored to be with so many brilliant artists. So my piece is the white figure with all the bulbous forms kind of.
Wait,
drawn.
hold the microphone a little further from your mouth.
Okay. I like to hear my mouth, like really loud. Anyway, so it's the bulbous forms, all the weighted things are coming from it, and it's from a series called The Weight We Carry. I've been working on that series for about, I don't know, maybe about 5 years now, and it kind of started from trying to wrap my head around something that I've already known for forever, which is we carry a lot of shit from our ancestors and from our life. And what do? We carry these heavy and beautiful things with us, and what do we do with it? What is it? And as a sculptor, I think, what does it look like? What would that look like? These weights that we pull and drag and lift, and then I met this incredible young man studying epigenetics at Yale, who's from the Ojibwe Nation, and he was studying epigenetics, and he wanted to go back to his reservation and talk to his community about understanding, like, what does it mean to, what does epigenetics means in the very essence of your cellular makeup. And I have a nerdy science husband who tried to break it down to me. And it's as simple as this. It's not, so your ancestors, some of your ancestors' stories and things that they've gone through, it's not that it's completely changed your genes, but it changes the way your genes work. So in other words, the way you react to stresses sometimes can be something that is directly, you're not even conscious of, but you're responding in a way that perhaps that's just been carried and it's in your genes, in your gene makeup. And I thought that was crazy inspiring. And the beautiful thing about the study of epigenetics is that we have the ability to, once recognizing certain tendencies and both beautiful and deeply difficult things that we push through, with recognition and self-care and knowledge and whatnot, we can kind of break cycles of, teaching our children to perhaps react to stresses the same way that we do and we might not enjoy it so much. So I know I'm an artist. I'm used to being in the studio by myself, and I'm quiet, and I'm making a lot of stuff. I don't like to talk about art too much. So I hope I summed it up. But if you felt something when you looked at it, that's kind of how I think about art. If it sparks something inside of you, and it makes you go home and think about it further and ask questions and revisit something that is difficult and sometimes joyful and beautiful, then my job's done. I guess it's a job, but I feel like that's kind of what an artist, part of what we do is ignite things inside.
So I think epigenetics is an interesting concept, and for all of you on the panel, there's a contribution that your past, where you come from, where you've been to at this point in your life. How much of that do you think has influenced your art, or can epigenetics happen to you in the moment? Is it an evolving thing, or is it, Susan, you're saying, you're born in the next generation and the next generation, but maybe it's something that is actually bubbling throughout your life. That make sense?
Yeah. I've been thinking on the same as in different way. I always think we human, we are like a moving trees, and we belong to a certain place, wanted or not. We're born in a certain soil, and we take the nutrients of that place, and we carry the nutrients everywhere we go. So at some point in my life, I question my identity as a Cuban. And, it's not my choice. I was born in Cuba, and I'm going to be a Cuban, and I see life as a Cuban. I mean, it's a label called me Cuban, but that label have a lot of information, all kind of information, humanly, historical, political, and it's right. I think we belong to a certain place, and that for the vision that we have from life. So all the component of my way of thinking, I'm superstitious. All that I was explaining about observing life, the conception of time, having a lot of time. Also, several components that I'm not going to mention because there are so many, but in Cuba, the lack of everything have a lot to do with the creativity of Cuban people. I mean, it's not a virtue, it's a necessity. Necessity is the mother of invention, so you have to look around, see what you have, and see what you can do the best with what you have. So that's I think is fundamental for my work and for me as a person.
Whoa. So this is amazing. What is that word? Epigenetics?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not intelligent enough to think about it as anything more.
I wanted her to define it, actually.
It's just a metaphor. I don't know if I believe it because, we live in a country where people have asserted who you are in really robust, thought out, racist ways. And I don't know, I'm afraid that, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And in fact, maybe what I think is, when I think about this, right? You have no idea what the heritage is of that paper. You just see it on the wall. And there's nothing that says where it comes from. But to me, that's just like geography. You know what I mean? I respect the fact that Cuba comes with a whole history to it. But if I pull the wrong Cuban history and I try to engage with you with that history that I selected to represent Cuba, you wouldn't agree with any of the things that you just said. And so I think that it's really complicated, and that we're always trying to perform some kind of alchemy where we're transforming and translating a bunch of idiosyncratic, discrete, irrelevant things into the person that we are in the world. And we actually believe that when people look at us, they could pull out the threads that matter to us, that made us who we are, but they fucking can't. And that's where all the tension comes from. And so you think that I think that the part of me that matters most is literally that, yo, it's cool being happy to me, right? I was going through some crazy shit, and I went into the Hertz, and you get rental cars from the Hertz. But I went in, and I was playing with a toy knife, which makes people think that you don't have a credit card. I don't know why they make people think that. But when I asked that I rent a car, they said if you have a credit card, which is the wildest shit anybody's ever said to me, because it's 2024, why would I not have a credit card? Anyway, I make a joke, and the woman doesn't laugh. And I make another joke, and the woman doesn't laugh. This is probably why I understood that the white dress, it was also a representation of oppression of men. I knew that wasn't funny, but also y'all want to laugh. Y'all still not laughing. Okay, this is going to be a good story. You got to make up for that joke. That was not a funny joke. The woman says, if you want to make me laugh, buy me a box of size 2A diapers. And I realized she's pregnant. I said, wow. I just missed something that's valuable about her character, her personality, the geography, where she comes from, that I didn't notice. So I said, I'm going to mess your head up when I bring you some diapers tomorrow. So the next morning, I bring some diapers to her. And she's devastated. I bring her 2 boxes, because I had to buy the first box, I ripped it open. So I had to buy it by accident. And then she says to me, man, my kid is already blessed. When he comes here on March 4th, he's going to know people love him. And
March 4th, he's being born on March 4th? Sorry, go ahead.
So when she say March 4th, that's my response. I'm on the phone with somebody, the person on the phone would say, she said March 4th. I stumbled back in the wall and started crying, and the woman was like, why are you crying? I was like, oh, well, you know, like I got out of prison, like 19 years ago on March 4th. This was the end of February when she said this. But this is the point, though. When you walk into a room and see somebody, all of those things that we imagine make up who they are is completely buried to us. And they will do something that makes us want to turn away from them, or that makes them want to turn away from us. And we always had a choice. But I think it's a hell of a burden to imagine that the thing that makes us do that thing is the understanding of something that's clear, it's like almost as fucking uncapturable as that sand on that other white dress. I mean, the reason why to me that's beautiful is because literally in capturing the impossible, it just reminded us how impossible it is to like really. Anyway,
Well, that's what Carlos is saying about his baby.
I think so, but I really resist this notion that like we could. I resist the notion we should agree with each other. Actually, that's why I disagree. It's just cool to disagree. You know, see what happens. But also, I do think this thing about people judge me as being a prisoner all of the time. So if I accept him being a Cuban, then I got to accept what comes with being a prisoner, and I refuse to. So I got to push back against it a little bit because that is my identity that most people in the world say that I go by. And being black in America has always led to some weird shit. So I can't accept that I got in trouble a little bit.
Dwayne touched on something is how I live my life in a crazy, crazy way. And I think, is it because I'm an artist? Is it because I'm a little on the edge and I'm trying to listen to all these maybe weird messages that come my way? But hello. But there are, call it serendipity, call it whatever you want, but there have been countless times in my life where human beings, Mother Nature have disrupted, interrupted, woke me up in such poetic, profound ways that I could list things. I mean, I go home, I'm weeping, I'm in the car, I'm crying, I'm laughing out loud. There's just constant reminders if you want to wake up and take the courage to meet, maybe, or look at someone differently, or take, just take chances, or that bird that just shot out in front of you on this path, and then the leaves did this swirly thing and then swept up your face and went behind you. All of these things are ways I feel that, you're being communicated with. At least that's how I feel. And with human beings, interaction with human beings have been true, oh man, it's been jaw-dropping, profound, and it's what I hold on to carry through my artistic everything. Welcome, nice to see you.
Welcome, Neville.
Thanks for having me. Sorry for being a little late.
They're gonna make you pick the microphone up.
Oh, okay. I guess it's me.
Well, I wonder, yeah, I don't know if you want to jump in, or if you want to, is there a way in which you think of your clothing as disruptive? Or is your clothing an artistic statement? I think that's probably very true.
I think it's very, well, I think the process is disruptive in terms of the fact that I have a company that produces actual clothing in a retail space in America. I think that's the disruption of our design aesthetic, but also in part with the fact that we are a community-based type of business in terms of being able to interact with individual, and we also have a strong opinion about clothing in general and how it sort of represents an individual or the mass majority of people. And a lot of my earlier ways of the company has changed in terms of the person that I have also now become. And so clothes is such an intricate part of our life. I think it's maybe more important than food, because a lot of times you don't think about what it is that you're going to eat, but it's almost like the first thing you do is to grab a piece of clothing, whether it be a robe or some pajamas or just a t-shirt. So clothes it's very important. It's a very important part of our day-to-day life. And so a lot of, my first initial way of seeing clothes when I became a designer, as opposed to how I see clothing or being a designer has changed quite a bit. And I don't know if neither for the best or the worst, neither for better or worse. I think it's just maturity or being in a different place in one's lifespan. So, I don't know if that answered the question too much, but.
I think it makes me have a question for everybody though, because I feel like, and even for you too, right, as somebody who was a curator, who has a different kind of understanding and appreciation of art than people you encounter. I wonder how you communicate that, or do you even communicate it when people come into your house, or people walk around with you? Do you feel the need to explicate some of the work, and do you feel the need to explicate some of your work and particularly Neville just sounded so biased. It sounded so much like a designer. He was like, clothes are more important than food. All the other people were like, for real? More important than an apple? What about an apple a day? Do clothes keep the dentist away? But I wonder for all of us, does that knowledge that seems really technical frustrate us, because the other people in the world, Like almost cut somebody out. I shouldn't say that. Almost said some aggressive language that was negative to a child because they said something that was ridiculous. Watch this. What is a haiku? Define haiku. Somebody, what is a haiku? Don't be afraid because you think I'm cursing. See what I mean? You see what she just said?
What'd she say?
She said 575.
Not necessarily.
See, but the thing is, like, if you grew up in America and you learn poetry in America, that's what you think. But then if you're a poet who's obsessed with haiku, who spent years studying it, somebody says 575 and you want to talk about syllabics in Japanese language as if that matters.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the offensiveness of you not knowing that there's crucial things that are haiku are not syllables, but the nature reference, the turn, the juxtaposition. And then everybody's like, why does that matter? I just want to know if I like the poem. Like, I didn't even count the syllables. You know, and that's what I wonder if like, we find ourselves responding to the world in a way that we're frustrated because we think that they should know what we know that makes us love either the thing that we produce or the things that we love or the things that we curate. No, it's for you.
I'm thinking about it. I get frustrated about a lot of things. I'm not particularly mad.
I got confused.
Because no, but it's a richness in your work too that you explicated at first that when I look at it, I wouldn't have known anything about
Well,
it.
you know, I don't like to explain my work because my work, when the work is done, it's supposed to have its own voice. It's a creation. But you know, the facts I'm here and I have to talk, so I have to say something. But also, you know, I always say that you should never trust artists because we always say different things. And also, what it makes us humans. And when I am creating and having a conversation, for me, art it takes me to outer space, some another dimension. I don't know where. And then I have all kinds of conversations, very, very private conversations. And you know, all those components are in form of energy in the work. And also for me, when I do art, it anticipates my thinking, my worries as a human in a society, in a community. Things that I don't know I worry about, but the worry is like I don't know, something magic. It happens. It's something that, and also I was talking to somebody yesterday and I say art is a curse because it's something that it could be very perturbing. It's on my mind. Sometimes I do art dreaming. During my dream, I want to be doing something else, something refreshing. Walking thinking on something different. Like it's a sort of obsession. So all this kind of passion and thinking are in the artwork, and that's what it charged the artwork itself. And that's what it makes it to communicate. And then I'm not going to live forever. My work is going to live longer. So I hope my work can speak for me and have its own voice.
I think that one of the great things about art is that you bring to it what you bring to it. And it's not necessarily what the artist brought or intended, but in a different context, art looks different, and so there's something really exciting about that. So I don't want necessarily people to see that I should explain what I see in the art. I mean, hopefully people will see the vision that I had in this exhibition, for instance, I hope someone could come in here and get some sense of what this show is about, without reading anything. It may not be exactly, or each piece might not be exactly what I envisioned, but I think, I hope that. So I'm not frustrated. And I think what's really exciting about it also is that it's almost like shuffling the deck. There's going to be the same amount of art, but it's going to be in a totally different location. So the conversations that are happening in this room now between these pieces are going to be very, very different. And there'll be different pieces. I'm kind of thinking, well, maybe the next venue, all the wedding dresses are going to be in one room rather than just a white, that was the concept, was that was sort of a white room. But let's put all the wedding dresses
That's what
together
it
and
is.
see how the wedding dresses talk to each other.
That's
So
not a
there'll be,
wedding dress?
what, that?
Yeah.
That is a wedding dress? That's Carmen's outfit from the opera.
I've never been to an opera before.
Yeah, but you've heard of Carmen.
Carmen? No.
You've never met a
Oh,
Carmen?
San Diego.
Yeah. No, that's a costume
But that-
from
but
an
that's
opera,
culture.
and there's a knife that's got blood on it, not a wedding.
But no, but hold on.
It could have been, it could have been the wrong
But you said in
wedding.
response though, I've literally never been to an
No,
opera
I
before.
know, that was a snotty thing to
No,
say.
no, it wasn't. I asked a question about how do
I
we
hate
respond to
that.
art, but you literally just saw the limitation,
Yeah.
and you immediately corrected it.
Yeah.
One, I thought that was a wedding dress because
Why?
because it's beautiful and it got roses and shit. And like,
But it's black. Did you know anybody got married in black?
I found out it's really seductive. Is that a knife up there?
Yes.
Yo, I love it. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I just,
you should look at the garment.
But the problem
Very
is,
flashy.
but I didn't know Carmen, and I had a lack of access to the art, and I just refused to believe that we shouldn't think about what it means to live in a world where people don't necessarily get the illusions. So I'm just asking the question of,
But I don't think you have to know that that's Carmen. What I see, when I look at that, is
There's always been kind of like this conflict between whether a fashion designer is an artist or he's not an artist. And, I really don't know, to be honest. Like, I'm either there. Sometimes I feel like I'm an artist, or I could fit into what being an artist is, but sometimes I don't even know what that is. And what I do know is that I have really good technical skills that can cut a piece of fabric into from a thought and some kind of communication and make something, most of the time it's wearable for for someone. And I know for a fact too that my clothes sometimes, no, in most cases, empower individuals who wear them and make them feel really beautiful and powerful when they need to. And so that's why I don't know if it's that art, is that, fashion design.
Yeah, but when you're designing something, do you ever or often have in your head a vision of who would wear that or where that person would wear that? Keith?
Me? I guess my fashion has been influenced in a lot of ways. Well, one of the things that I find out that I now know about myself is that my brain records things that I somehow don't have any comprehension of. Like, I'm not aware of what is happening between visual and somewhat mental, should I say. And so, in every now and again, it just kind of like pushes itself forward, and I'm like, yo, that's great, like, I love it, but it's not like coming in like a format that I a lot of times can't explain, because I might be inspired by something that I don't even have a consciousness of, because of how complex my body and the system of my body works. And so sometimes I will just go with kind of like whatever the vibe is. I'll try to start with my own sort of like thing, and then it kind of like changes directions, and then I'll have a conclusion.
yo, so one, you say the same thing, which I appreciate, and also you said art is a curse. and which is, I think we just glossed over. And I thought that was actually important, true. And the poem, I wrote a poem about this artist named Winfred Rembrandt, and I swear it was the same thing. Like I had got up that morning. It was like I get up early. This morning, not to brag, but I was up at 2 o'clock biking in Hampton. I biked like 7 miles. It was crazy to bike that early in the morning because it's only you and a deer out. But one morning I got up, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I wasn't near my bike, so I ended up just like crying on the curb for like 30 minutes, which was crazy. And I eventually got back to my computer. I was talking to a friend, and I was on WhatsApp, and I keep vampire hours, and so I'm on WhatsApp, and I'm talking to the person, and I had been working on this poem for months. I know when it happened because at 5:22 it bings, and that's the person getting at me, right? And I was looking at the computer screen, and it was half empty, but it had words, and I swear I went into like a trance. And I'm just banging the keys, and I could type pretty fast because I went to prison and I had to learn how to type because they was going to throw me in solitary confinement if they caught me typing the poems on the typewriter, because they only use typewriters. Even though this was the 2000s, I learned how to type on a typewriter, and to keep from getting put in a hole, I would type fast so I could get my poems hidden so I could send them to magazines to get published. That's a digression. The point is, I'm banging on the keys, 5:22 to 5:34. And I send the poem to her just because I want a record that this shit is impossible. I ain't even read it yet. You know, the first time I read it was like, you know, like 2 days later. You know what I mean? I gave, and the first people I sent it to, they didn't believe I wrote it. They was like, who wrote this? And it was like, this is cool, but why are you sending somebody else's poem without a name on it? And so anyway, my point is that I think that happens. But the reason why it is frightening is because, you know, sometimes it happens and the thing that comes out, you don't even want to share it with yourself. You know, the world, so. But it's exciting though, you know what I mean? It really is this rush to be like, yo, did this actually just happen in this way?
There are countless times that, I mean, I've been making sculpture for 32 years, and I'm 51. I am. I got a kid in college. Anyway, so there are moments, especially working in mixed media, I oftentimes I'll go in with sometimes a little bit of an intention, but by the time I start touching the materials, and a lot of times it's found objects that I mix with clay or carved wood or whatever, and as the puzzle pieces start coming together, that experience is telling me the story already, and the emotional connection, and then, I mean, I tell you, if there was a camera inside the studio, y'all would think I'm crazy, because I would start busting out laughing. And then there are times where it's such a powerful, these quiet, unheard, I don't even know, you know, this whole thing that we're a vehicle, but things are coming out and you don't know what it means or how they're collected, and it makes me think about the thing you said about, like, you know, you cut it and you don't know what it I mean, this is, especially when you practice your work and you do it long enough, there is I don't even know what you call it, like a raw, intuitive, I have no words, I don't know what it is, but it is a thing that is so real. There's always disappointment that comes from me, and then there's sometimes total, I'm shaking my head as I leave the studio, I'm like, I'm good, damn it. And then some other days I leave and I was like, what was that about? Like, what the hell? And then, you know, I have a 19-year-old son who's studying jazz guitar. This is what he wants to do, bless his heart. I don't know how he's gonna make a living, and he's already going through these young experiences of connecting his creative self with, you know, listening to quieter, like irritating little pokes, and knowing that even though that's not what his professor wants him to do, but that's what his intuitive, guttural self wants to do and express how he's, you know, interpreting this jazz standard or whatever. And I was like, dude, that's called being an artist, and you got to listen to that. And there are times where it's gonna feel super deflating and disappointing, and there are times that you're just gonna walk out and you feel like you're floating. I see a lot of people nodding because anyone who's created anything, music, art, knows that feeling, basically, I think.
Does anyone in the audience want to ask a question? John?
There's some commonality between all you guys, and what's interesting is when I listen to you talking about the creative side, it's like there's something inside that has to come out, and you're all four of you are very passionate about that connection where you go into the state of mind and then something comes out. The question I have for each one of you, how do you know when to stop?
I'm going to start being the only woman on the right here, but someone told me years ago, never tell people you're a mother. You're an artist, and don't say that you're a mother. And I was like, that's bullshit. I am a mother, and I'm an artist. And I will tell you, sometimes when I know I need to stop, I gotta go home. I gotta make dinner for my kids. I mean, or I gotta put gas in the car. I mean, that's the real story. And then the stories of when you're in the studio and you've got that whole day ahead of you, which is rare. For me, I get so physically exhausted, like, and you don't even realize it's happening then, and then I just like, I just shut down, and I'm like, okay, my body and whatever's had enough, so that's my story.
Stop what? I mean,
Stop making.
Stop
Do you
making
mean stop
something.
making it on a day, or
Yeah.
you mean
No,
when
how do you know when
the piece is
Stop being an
done?
artist.
No, how do you know when you're satisfied?
When
How do
When
you
you're
stop yourself?
satisfied and you're done and you're ready to say, I'm moving on.
With a single piece.
I'm sorry, I wasn't
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. No, it's cool because it's artists and runs. I guess I am an artist. Stopping. Well, these days I'm much better at stopping. I set specific time limits for myself nowadays, and I will not, for the most part. I try really hard. Every now and again I still slip up, but for the most part, I will have a certain amount of time that I put into something. However, because I also am this person who allows myself to enjoy whatever it is that I'm doing at the time that I'm doing it, and nothing can stop me from doing it. So I don't know when to stop, sometimes, but a lot of times.
I don't even know me, I was calling that. He was like, sometimes, a lot of times, but maybe. You know what? And this is like the definition of an artist, though, because an artist, I feel like an artist is in a constant state of revision.
Yeah.
You know, an artist is in a constant state, and that's why, you know, even when you said it, I feel like even when I feel like I'm constantly revising poems, even when I say that they're finished.
Yeah.
But two, I feel like I'm constantly writing, in some ways, the same poems again and again. And I think if you got, you know, I was lucky with that one piece. But then the other 100, it's like trash. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I stopped because I stopped weeping. You know what I mean? But anyway, I think but I think the people, for people who are artists, don't have young kids who want to be artists. I think actually the most compelling advice that I just heard was thinking about how do you set a time limit for yourself. Be like, well, I'm gonna work for this long, because I think the phones and the internet have disrupted our ability to focus. So I don't know, maybe one way for me is these days it's less about how to find time to stop, and it's more about how to find time to start. And in fact, really I'd be joking about biking at 1 and 2 in the morning, but it's the only way I can get time. Like, where else can you get literally legit 90 minutes where you're not obligated to like, I know I'm not gonna have to answer the phone. I don't even have to push it. No, I literally know that nobody's gonna bother me. And sometimes I grab their food 2 hours and nobody bothers me. So I think artists actually, more than knowing when to start, I think artists in this world have to actually aggressively figure out how to carve out the space to start.
Well, I will answer reformulating your question. I think for me the question would be rather than when to stop, is when to escape. Because you create a relationship with your artwork, which sometimes it can become an obsession. As I go back to some of my early work, I can keep working on it. So the question is when to put the umbilical cord and let it go. So that's what I do.
Yeah.
And hi everyone, I have a question for you and then a question for the artist. Curating this is a creative act, and it's such a moving exhibit, and I was really interested in when you talked about the context of the pieces being in different places. Once you had all the pieces together, did your concept of the exhibit change at all? And then for the artist, I wanted to ask, did your concept of your own piece change seeing it in a different place? Or does that ever change? Like, does your concept of the piece just is what it is, or seeing it with other pieces, did it change how you understood or thought about your pieces?
I was sort of going to answer your second question for them, because when I had a gallery and I would have a solo show and the artists would send their work to me and I would curate the hanging of the show, and most of the time they weren't there, and so then they'd come in, and many times they would say, wow, I never sort of thought of putting that piece next to that piece. That's really interesting. So I think in a way artists, yeah, it can change for them. For me, it's always terrifying because I collect all the pieces and then I just sort of lay them out on the floor. I mean, in this case, it was a big show, so I had diagrams. And you start to plot them around. And it doesn't change the concept of the show, but you start to make the dialogues. I mean, Carlos we were talking about this earlier, and it was kind of cool. He said it's like a symphony. It's like you're the conductor. All the notes are there, the instruments, but then you're conducting it, and you can conduct one day and have the pace and the tone of the orchestra be one thing, and then another day you can pick up the pace and have the tone be a different thing. So
are you looking forward to the next show?
I'm getting really excited about the next show. We're starting to think about the totally different relationships that that these will have. As I said, I mean the piece that's in the way back, the shirts that are hanging in this, I think, very powerful, very enclosed with the shadows of the space. When it goes to the Hudson River Museum, we'll have the Hudson River behind it in a space the size of this, and so it won't be by itself, and it won't be casting all these shadows, and it will have a very different feeling as a vocal part. And it will be in a conversation with something other than Sidney Russell's funny, beautiful, huge, which could be a chandelier in the right room, boosting.
Like Christmas Story, or is it a Christmas Carol? You remember?
Which are you talking about? Mr. Forrest?
The one where the father got that lamp?
Yeah.
He was obsessed with the lamp? That's kind of the shit.
I think what curators do is create a momentum with all these separate voices, because when I go into the show, it's a special moment. You see all these pieces belong to separate artists and they have their own voices, but all these voices together create a sort of symphony, because there is a subject, there is a thread that connect all the pieces together. So this is like a special experience, and when it's well done, like this great show, you can have this conversation in too many different levels with all these artists.
I'm the one that's not visual. I like basketball at all, and why I love teaching poetry to children is when you give somebody who is a viewer a little bit of insight into the creative process, they become more engaged as an experiencer of work. And so, me having to get a chance to spend a little bit of time creating something visually forced me to learn a little bit more about the process. And as a result, I find that I'm engaging with the work in a very, very different kind of way. Like, I didn't see this dress different from the other wedding dresses, but I thought that visually, I was being asked not to see it differently from the other dresses. I thought I was being asked to imagine something beautiful, you know, existing like this as well. I mean, it's at the center of it, so why would the thing that's at the center want to make me sad? I was like, hey, I was happy. It should make me happy too. So it's really interesting how, like, art taught me to feel that way. I can't wait to see Carl.
I was totally blown away when I saw my piece in here, in that beautiful room. Really gorgeous, and it's hard to see my work with proper space and lighting in my studio because I just moved to a new studio. It's only 1,000 square feet, but I have probably 1,000 pieces of work, like both life-size and small. And it's like salon style, because we sculptors, we don't have the luxury of flat filing our work, right? So, and I'm cursing every time I put shows up. I'm not gonna paint it, man. Like, you know, just the schlep of it all is crazy. But, so everything just gets piled up in the corner and layered and up, you know, it goes work on the wall. And to see open space and properly lit, and to see the shadows and the echoes of certain lines is really beautiful. And letting a piece breathe is a real thing. It really does breathe when it has space. So that's nice. How is it when different models wear your work? I mean, in some ways, that's kind of,
Yeah.
you know, like, you're not the gallery walls, but you've got the people's body.
Models for me is just, it's like hiring a plumber.
How about like regular people wear your
Or a
work?
carpenter. That's what models for me. And models is just a way for me.
He was like, for real, did you just ask me to be misogynist in public? I'm like, oh yeah, I got your answer. All these wedding dresses. You know, well, look, it's a delight.
Actually,
I'm gonna go change now. I'm sorry, I work.
no, actually, models are very important in terms of
Numbers are also very important. It's like, oh, this is the most fun I've ever been on. Can I be a model?
Oh, you gotta get
So for many years, I blocked off a street in New Haven, and we would have a fashion show, and it would be our customers and our models together as one. I tell you something, the customers, even though I love in the show, you know, it's not something that they do on a regular, you know, they're very self-conscious, you know, there's a lot of coaching and a lot of, oh, you're beautiful, you're absolutely. and I mean it, I'm not just telling them this, I actually believe that they are, you know, like everyone is beautiful in their own representation. And I love, you know, I get the most pleasure, really, out of someone wearing a garment that I made for them, and they tell me how many times they've worn it, or how great they felt when they wore it. I think that really is the important part. So that's kind of like my,
For the record, I bought a lot of clothes.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, I'm joking, but man, this is beautiful. I mean, literally, I just gave somebody a coat. The double-breasted camel joint, beautiful, but I lost a little bit of weight. So I can't fit it anymore, right? And what's wild is you see clothes and you always think about, you know, what is the second life? And this is maybe how I answer your question. When you look there, I'm an artist. You think about art, it's like art always has a second life. And the way I'm gonna think about clothes and why I know that the clothes are art is because when I couldn't fit it anymore, I was like, oh, I could, like Salvation Army, I was like, nah. And I thought about somebody who I know, who one day I saw him with a similar cutout on, and the dude was stunning. And I was like, oh man, this is gonna look great on this cat. And literally it was, and also though, this is why it's art, because art is supposed to challenge your conception of self. And it was just the beauty of the coat that made me think about who I wanted to see wearing it, which did maybe challenge my own like internal homophobia and shit. And actually have to, one, think about who would be beautiful wearing it, and then two, say that to the person with the assumption that they don't expect me to want to have sex with them, or if they do, they would at least consider it before dismissing me as somebody who can't be their model.
That's enough out of it. Yeah. Do we have another question? Yes, thank you.
Hi, Carlos, when you said that you didn't want to talk to you about your art, that really resonated with me. I'm just starting to bring, I'm a writer, and I'm just starting to bring my work public. So, as Blaine said, I don't want criticism. I want people to like read it and take what they want for it. So, I want to say like, how do I shut that down? But I mean, I don't want to. You know, I really want to kind of be on my own feet with my writing and not take in a lot that I may or may not agree with. And I just wanted to hear your comments and also probably please.
Well, let me take this opportunity to clarify something. I'd like to talk about my art, but what I say about my art is not my art. I mean, they're separate things. My art is something that I love the fact that people can see many different things based in their own experience, and that's what it validates that art is alike. So, but I do like to talk about my experience, my suffering, my satisfactions. I mean, it's a compound of too many human emotions. I don't care to share it because you know, the artists that I admire, I always wanted to ask something, and that's an opportunity. But there's separate things. I mean, it goes together, but separate at the same time.
And I do want to just say, because I don't think any of us believe that we are above criticism, and that criticism is a necessary part of our art. I think as an artist, I do think what all of us were saying, we don't want to defend our art in a public space. We don't want to explicate our art for audience. I don't either. I was just asking a question, but I am challenged when I got a line in the poem, like, I had a line that said, I got debts no honest man can pay. And a friend of mine said to me, yo, you know Bruce Springsteen said the same thing. You know, I was like, what? So anyway, but there are things you can learn, both from reading and from taking classes with skilled artists. And I do think that when you do take a workshop, what you want to look for is somebody who recognizes that revision is crucially important, but they should teach you to recognize that revision means that you have to learn to believe that mistakes are necessary for growth, and that part of what you want to teach an instructor to do is not just point out mistakes, but help you create a toolbox of ways to approach whatever dilemma that you will confront in the work that you need to solve. One of the most beautiful metaphors for revision and for becoming, to me, is the automatic watch. So automatic watch is like, you know, you twist the dial or whatever, but it's a regular watch, but then if it tells the month, that's called a complication. If it tells the date, that's called another complication. And the more things that it does that makes it more sophisticated, they're called complications. Why? Because the build a machine that does those things is more difficult, it's more complex. You want a teacher to help you understand that you will get to the point that you're doing more and more sophisticated and complicated things that pose different kinds of challenges. And if you don't work with somebody else, then what you're saying is that you want to dismiss the everything since the Gutenberg, you know, what is it? Gutenberg? I'm a heathen, and this is what I'm saying.
I'm Jewish, I know.
I also think it's the longer, you know, when you take those first steps out and put your work out in the world, you can't, you know, it's going to happen. If someone, there's a lot of, it's so easy to hate these days. I mean, it's always easy to hate. But in particular, I watch my sons you know, with social media and everything, it's just, it's an ugly force. And it can also be used for a lot of interesting stuff too, but there's a lot, it's easy to hate and put out comments quickly without any name connected to it. And with the practice, you've probably been writing for a long time for yourself, yeah. So, but with even, there's practice even in putting your work out there too. And that, like, every time you do it, you're like, okay, that was all right, and I heard that lady, but I don't care what she said. I'm gonna, you know, then you take the next step out. And that, it's like a building block, just like the building blocks, the very building blocks you have been building all along to write. I mean, it's repetition. You ever feel that way? With, like, from the beginning years when you were doing your magic, and how it feels now?
Well, first of all, I should clarify that I'm a retired fashion designer. Well, it's not a retirement in terms of like how people go through retirement. I just decided that I spend a lot of my time doing something that I don't have the time to do as much anymore, and I still enjoy making something, but it's really difficult to make anything for anybody these days. As I've spent a lot of time making clothes, and I just don't have enough time to do. I have other life goals and stuff, but now I don't really care whether or not somebody likes that I make what I make. I feel like I should just be that way all the time. I should just be like, you know, I'm self-indulgent. Do something and do it from the bottom of my heart, and if somebody loves it, then great. But that's not what the true purpose of it.